I'm Mila, 29 years old, 18 months. That's how long my mother spent dragging me through court, trying to prove my grandmother was senile when she wrote her will. 18 months of her calling me a gold digger, a snake, and an ungrateful grandchild who manipulated a helpless old woman. But my mother didn't know something. Grandma had been preparing for this day for a very, very long time, and when we found the hidden room inside the mansion, a room that had been sealed for 40 years, everything changed. Before I continue, if you find this story worth hearing, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely want to follow along. Oh, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now, let me take you back 2 years ago, to the day my grandmother was admitted to the hospital for the last time. The call came at 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. Miss Marshall, this is Hartford General. Your grandmother, Margaret Marshall, has been admitted, congestive heart failure. I was on a plane from Portland within 3 hours. The entire flight, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Grandma Margaret was 84, but she'd always seemed invincible to me. The woman who taught me to plant roses, who held me when I cried myself to sleep at 7 years old, the night my mother walked out. When I arrived at the hospital, my mother was already there. Karen Marshall, 54, blonde highlights, Hermes scarf draped just so, stood in the hallway talking to a doctor. She didn't acknowledge me. Not a glance, not a nod. I approached slowly. "Mom, how is she?" Karen finally turned. Her eyes swept over me like I was a stain on the wallpaper. "Oh, you came." Her voice was ice. "I thought you were too busy with your little career to bother." "She's my grandmother." "She's my mother." Karen turned back to the doctor, dismissing me completely. "As I was saying, doctor, I'll need copies of all her medical records." I tried again. "Can I see her?" Karen spoke to the nurse without looking at me. "Only immediate family is allowed in right now. The patient needs rest." The nurse glanced between us, confused. "Ma'am, isn't this—" "She's not immediate family." Karen's smile was razor thin. "Not really." The words hit like a slap. 22 years of being raised by Grandma Margaret, and I wasn't real family. I stood there in that sterile hallway, watching my mother disappear into my grandmother's room. The door clicked shut behind her. And I realized something that should have been obvious years ago. To Karen Marshall, I had never been her daughter. I was just an inconvenience she'd left behind. I waited until Karen left for lunch. The moment I saw her disappear into the elevator, I slipped into Grandma's room. The monitors beeped softly. Tubes and wires connected her frail body to machines that seemed too loud, too harsh for someone so gentle. But when her eyes fluttered open and found mine, they lit up like morning sun. "My girl." Her voice was a whisper, but warm. "You came." I took her hand. Her skin felt like tissue paper, but her grip was surprisingly strong. "Of course I came, Grandma." "Don't—" She paused, catching her breath. "Don't believe anything Karen tells you about me. I'm sharper than she thinks." I squeezed her hand. "I know." Margaret's eyes drifted toward the window. "The room, William's room. Remember, Mila, if you ever need answers." William, my grandfather, who died before I was born. I'd heard stories about his study, but I'd never seen a separate room in the mansion. "Grandma, I don't understand." The door swung open. Karen stood in the doorway, a paper coffee cup in her hand, her eyes locked onto our intertwined fingers. "What are you doing in here?" Her voice carried that familiar edge of accusation. "I'm visiting my grandmother." Karen turned to the nurse who had followed her in. "You see this? This is exactly what I was worried about." She gestured at me. "She's always trying to isolate my mother from the family. This is textbook elder manipulation." The nurse's expression shifted. She looked at me differently now, with suspicion. I opened my mouth to defend myself, but Grandma Margaret squeezed my hand. A warning, stay calm. "I was just leaving," I said quietly. As I walked past Karen, she murmured something only I could hear. "I've recorded everything, Mila. Everything." The words made no sense to me then, but they would. 3 days later, Grandma Margaret passed away in her sleep. I was holding her hand when it happened, The monitors flatlined at 3:22 a.m. The nurses rushed in, but I already knew. Her grip had loosened. The light behind her eyes, gone. Karen arrived 2 hours later. 2 hours. She burst through the door in full mourning attire, black dress, dark sunglasses pushed up on her head, and collapsed dramatically at the bedside. "Mama! Oh, Mama, I'm so sorry I wasn't here!" She sobbed loudly, clutching the sheets. "I should have been here, I should have!" The performance was flawless. Nurses exchanged sympathetic glances. A young orderly brought her tissues. I said nothing. What was there to say? 1 week later, we gathered at the law offices of Harold Jennings for the reading of the will. Dark wood paneling, leather chairs, the smell of old books and older money. Around the conference table sat Karen and her husband, Richard Cole, a former real estate broker with nervous eyes and a weak handshake. Aunt Patricia, Karen's younger sister, sat stiffly in the corner. A few distant cousins I barely recognized filled the remaining seats. Harold Jennings was 72, with silver hair and the calm demeanor of a man who had seen every kind of family drama. He'd been Grandma Margaret's attorney for 30 years. He cleared his throat and began to read. I, Margaret Eleanor Marshall, being of sound mind and body, do hereby bequeath. The room was silent. Karen leaned forward, expectant. My residence at 847 West Haven Drive, valued at $6.8 million, along with all its contents, to my granddaughter, Mila Ann Marshall. The silence shattered. Karen's coffee cup hit the floor. To my daughter, Karen Patricia Marshall Cole, I leave the sum of $1. Karen erupted like a volcano that had been dormant for decades. No! She slammed both palms on the mahogany table. This is fraud! Harold remained impassive. Mrs. Cole, please. Don't you Mrs. Cole me! Karen whirled toward me, finger jabbing the air. You! What did you do to her? What did you whisper in her ear while she was drugged up and dying? I kept my voice level. I didn't do anything. Liar! Spittle flew from her lips. Richard tried to pull her back into her seat, but she shook him off violently. My mother had dementia. She didn't know what she was signing. Harold spoke calmly. Mrs. Marshall was evaluated by her physician. She was of sound mind when... Her physician? Karen laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. Who? Someone she paid off? She pointed at me again. Or someone this little gold digger bribed? Aunt Patricia shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. The distant cousins exchanged wide-eyed glances. Karen turned to the room, arms spread wide, playing to her audience. My mother loved me. She would never cut me out of her will. This girl, her voice dripped with venom, manipulated a senile old woman. This is elder abuse. This is coercion. The will is legally valid, Harold said. Witnessed by 2 parties, notarized, and filed properly. Karen straightened her spine, composing herself with visible effort. When she spoke again, her voice had gone cold, calculated. We'll let the courts decide that, won't we? She gathered her purse. I'm contesting this will. I'll have it declared invalid. And when I'm done, everyone will know exactly what kind of person my granddaughter really is. She paused at the door, looking back at me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. See you in court, sweetheart. The door slammed behind her. After the explosion, the conference room emptied quickly. Richard hurried after Karen without a backward glance. The distant cousins mumbled excuses and fled. Only Aunt Patricia lingered. She approached me hesitantly, wringing her hands. Mila, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, Aunt Patricia. She glanced toward the door, as if afraid Karen might burst back in. Karen is my sister. I have to stand by her. You understand, right? I understood perfectly. Blood over truth. Appearances over reality. The Marshall family motto. Of course, I said quietly. Patricia left without another word. Harold began gathering his papers. Miss Marshall, I want you to know this will be a difficult fight. Karen has resources. She'll drag this out. I know. But the will is solid. Your grandmother made sure of that. He paused, studying me. She loved you very much. That night, I drove to the mansion alone. My mansion now, technically, though it didn't feel like mine. It felt like Grandma Margaret's ghost still wandered the halls. I sat in her bedroom, surrounded by photographs. One caught my eye, me at 7 years old, sobbing in Grandma's arms. The day Karen left. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. The text read, "Miss Marshall, I'm a private investigator. Been hired by Karen Marshall to look into you. Thought you should know." My stomach dropped. Another message followed. "She's looking for anything to destroy you." I stared at the screen. Who was this? Why warn me? Before I could respond, a third message appeared. "Watch your back. She's more desperate than you know." I sat in the darkness of my grandmother's room, clutching my phone. Somewhere out there, Karen was already sharpening her knives, and I was completely, utterly alone. 2 weeks later, the lawsuit arrived. The courier handed me a thick manila envelope on the front porch of the mansion. Inside, a formal complaint filed with the Connecticut Superior Court, case number 2024-CV-1847, Karen Patricia Marshall Cole versus Mila Ann Marshall. The allegations read like a horror novel, where I was the monster. Undue influence over a mentally incapacitated elderly person. Systematic isolation of Margaret Marshall from her biological family. Financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. Procurement of testamentary documents through fraud and coercion. Karen was claiming Grandma had Alzheimer's, that I had brainwashed her, that I'd forged her signature, that I was, essentially, a criminal. I called Harold immediately. "I've seen it," he said. His voice was calm but serious. "This will be a long battle, Miss Marshall. 18 months, minimum." "Can she win?" "Not if the truth matters, but truth and courtrooms don't always align." He paused. "Karen has hired Victoria Smith from Hartford. She's expensive and aggressive." I sank onto Grandma's favorite armchair. "Why is she doing this? It can't just be about money." Harold was quiet for a moment. Then, "Miss Marshall, your grandmother and I discussed many things over the years. She had her reasons for the will, and she knew Karen would react exactly this way. Then why not just explain? Leave a letter?" "She did leave something," Harold said carefully. "But she wanted you to find it yourself, when you were ready." "Find what?" Another pause. "Do you remember your grandfather's study?" My heart skipped. "Grandma mentioned it, at the hospital, but there's no study in this house." "There is," Harold said. "You just haven't found it yet. Look in the library, third bookshelf, a book called First Principles." The line went dead. Karen didn't wait for the courts to act. She launched her own offensive. By month 3, the rumors had spread through every country club and charity gala in Hartford County. I wasn't just a granddaughter contesting a will. I was a predator, a manipulator, a monster who had isolated a helpless old woman and stolen her fortune. I learned about the Whisper campaign the hard way. The email from my firm arrived on a Tuesday morning. "Dear Mila, we've received concerning information from an anonymous source regarding your personal conduct. Pending investigation, we're placing you on administrative leave." I called my supervisor immediately. "Janet, what's going on?" Her voice was strained. "Someone called HR, said you have psychological issues, that you're involved in financial fraud. They mentioned the lawsuit." "That's my mother. She's lying." "Mila, I believe you, but the partners are nervous. With clients finding out..." She trailed off. "I'm sorry, my hands are tied." Administrative leave became termination 2 weeks later. I applied to 3 other landscape architecture firms in the following month. All 3 rejected me. Through a former colleague, I learned why. Someone had been calling ahead, poisoning the well. "She said you had a history of manipulating elderly clients," my colleague whispered. She sounded so concerned, so sincere. Karen wasn't just trying to win the lawsuit. She was trying to erase me. That night I sat alone in the mansion's kitchen, eating cereal for dinner because I'd forgotten to buy groceries. The silence pressed down like a physical weight. My grandmother's voice echoed in my memory. "I've recorded everything, Mila." What did she record? What was she trying to tell me? I looked toward the library, the third bookshelf, a book called First Principles. Tomorrow, I decided. Tomorrow I would find out. Karen requested a meeting at month 6. To discuss a settlement, her lawyer said. We met at a neutral cafe in downtown Hartford. Karen arrived in designer mourning, black Chanel, pearl earrings, the grieving daughter aesthetic perfected. Richard sat beside her like a well-trained lapdog. I sat across from them, alone. Karen folded her hands on the table. Sweetheart, I don't want this ugliness any more than you do. Then drop the lawsuit. I can't do that. Her smile was sympathetic, rehearsed. But I can offer you a deal, 50-50 split. You get half the mansion's value, I get the other half. Everyone walks away happy. The will was clear. The will was written by a confused old woman. Grandma wasn't confused. Karen's mask slipped, just for a second. Something ugly flickered behind her eyes. You don't know what you're talking about. I know she was tested, regularly. Her mind was sharp until the end. Tests can be faked, doctors can be paid. Karen leaned forward. Do you really want to drag this through court? Do you know what I'll do to your reputation? You've already tried. Tried? She laughed softly. Honey, I haven't even started. Richard cleared his throat. Listen, this doesn't have to get worse. Just take the deal. Save yourself the trouble. I looked at him, at his sweaty forehead, his darting eyes. He was scared. But of what? I stood up. I'll see you in court. Karen's voice followed me as I walked away, sharp and cold. You don't know what I'm capable of, Mila. I paused at the door, turned back. Neither do you. I left her sitting there, her perfect composure cracking just slightly around the edges. But her threat echoed in my mind all the way home. Month 8. The lawsuit dragged on. My savings dwindled. The isolation deepened. But Harold's words haunted me. Look in the library. 3rd bookshelf. I had avoided it for months. Part of me was afraid of what I'd find. Part of me wasn't sure I was ready. That night, I finally climbed the stairs to the 2nd-floor library. The room smelled like grandma, lavender and old paper. Moonlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating rows upon rows of leather-bound books. I walked to the 3rd bookshelf and ran my fingers along the spines. History, philosophy, poetry. Then I saw it. First Principles. A worn volume with gold lettering tucked between Marcus Aurelius and Seneca. I pulled it from the shelf. Click. A mechanical sound, soft but distinct. The entire bookshelf shuddered, then slowly, impossibly, swung inward. Behind it was a door. Oak, old, covered in 40 years of dust. My heart pounded. Grandma's words at the hospital. William's room, if you ever need answers. This was it. Grandfather William's hidden study. The room that didn't officially exist. I pushed the door open. The space was small, maybe 10 feet square, but it was packed with history. An antique desk, a cracked leather chair, filing cabinets lined one wall, and on the desk, positioned as if waiting for me, a metal box with a sticky note attached. The handwriting was shaky but unmistakable. Grandma Margaret's. For Mila, when the time comes. My hands trembled as I opened the box. Inside was a USB drive, a small digital camera, and a handwritten letter sealed in an envelope. I picked up the letter. My name was written on the front in Grandma's careful script. Whatever was in this room, she had left it specifically for me. I wasn't alone after all. The room held more secrets than I could have imagined. Against the far wall sat an old television monitor connected to what looked like a primitive recording system, the kind from the early 2000s, wires snaked across the floor to a more modern laptop, clearly added later. Grandma had upgraded, she'd been recording for years. I turned on the laptop. The desktop was organized with military precision, folders labeled by year, 2012, 2013, 2014, all the way through 2024. Inside each folder, video files, dozens of them. 147 videos total, I whispered, counting. But before I watched any of them, I needed to read her letter. I settled into Grandfather William's old chair and broke the seal. My dearest Mila, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and Karen has done exactly what I predicted. She's fighting for the mansion. She's calling me senile. She's trying to destroy you. I want you to know the truth. Karen began borrowing money from me in 2012. At first it was small amounts, 10,000 here, 20,000 there. She said it was for emergencies, for Richard's business troubles, for things I didn't question because she was my daughter. By 2015, I realized I'd lost control. She had me sign papers while I was recovering from hip surgery, still foggy from painkillers. A power of attorney. Access to my accounts. When I tried to revoke it, she threatened me. She said if I didn't keep giving her money, she would make sure you never visited me again. She would tell you lies about me. I was weak. I was afraid. So I stayed silent. But I wasn't stupid. I recorded everything, Mila. Every visit where she demanded money, every threat, every forged signature. The USB contains 147 videos. Use them wisely. I love you more than words can say. Grandma. I read the letter 3 times. Each time, the words cut deeper. 12 years. Karen had been draining Grandma for 12 years, threatening her, manipulating her, using me as a weapon. My hands shook as I plugged the USB into the laptop. The files loaded. 147 video thumbnails, each one dated and labeled. I clicked on the first one, dated January 15th, 2012. The video showed Grandma's living room, the same living room I'd spent my childhood in. Karen sat across from her, legs crossed, expression pleasant. I just need 10,000, Mama. Richard's car broke down. That's the 3rd time this year, Karen. Well, these things happen. You can afford it. The video ended. I clicked the next one. March 2012, 15,000 for home repairs. Then I jumped ahead. Video number 35, dated March 15th, 2018. The scene was different. Grandma looked older, frailer. Karen's pleasant mask was gone. Sign the check, Mother. Karen, this is $75,000. I know what it is. Sign it. What is this money for? Karen's face twisted. Richard has a problem, a gambling problem. If I don't cover his debts, certain people will be very unhappy. Karen, I can't keep... You can! Karen leaned forward, eyes blazing. And you will, unless you want me to tell Mila what you really think of her. Unless you want me to make sure she never visits you again. Grandma's face crumpled. Please don't do this. Sign the check. The video ended with Grandma's trembling hand picking up the pen. I sat in the darkness of William's hidden room, tears streaming down my face. Karen hadn't just stolen money, she had terrorized an old woman for over a decade, and now I had proof, all of it. Now, I know this is where things start to shift. But before I continue, I have to ask you something. If you were in my position, what would you do with those videos? Release them immediately? Or wait for the right moment? Drop your answer in the comments. I genuinely want to know what you think. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time to hit that button, because what comes next, you won't want to miss it. All right, back to the story. I spent the next 3 days in that hidden room, watching video after video. The pattern was always the same. Karen would arrive, smiling. She'd ask for money, sometimes demanding, sometimes guilt-tripping, sometimes threatening, and Grandma would give in, every single time. Video 42, 2019. Karen forging Grandma's signature on a bank transfer. She won't remember anyway, she muttered to someone off camera, Richard probably. Video 67, 2021. Karen screaming at Grandma for hiding money. I know you have more! Where is it? Video 89, 2022. Karen counting cash she'd found in a drawer. Stupid old woman, keeping money like it's the Depression. I totaled the amounts mentioned across all the videos. Conservative estimate, over $2 million. Stolen, extorted, taken from a woman who was too afraid and too in love with her daughter to fight back. But the most devastating video was the last one, number 147. Dated 1 week before Grandma went to the hospital. She sat alone in this very room, facing the camera directly. Her eyes were tired but clear, sharper than they'd been in years. If you're watching this, Karen, it means you've done exactly what I expected. You're contesting the will, you're calling me senile, you're trying to take everything from Mila. She paused, taking a shaky breath. I want you to know. I was never senile. I had cognitive tests every 6 months. Dr. Patterson has all the records. I was of sound mind until the very end. Her voice hardened. I left everything to Mila because she was the only one who ever loved me without conditions. And you, Karen. She shook her head, tears glistening. You only saw me as an ATM. The video ended. I closed the laptop and sat in the silence. Grandma had handed me the sword. Now I had to decide how to use it. But there was one more video I hadn't watched. Buried in a separate folder labeled Play Last, I found a file titled For Karen, When She's in the Room. I opened it. Grandma appeared on screen, wearing her favorite blue cardigan, the one I'd bought her for Christmas years ago. She looked directly into the camera, her expression serene but sad. Karen, if Mila is playing this video, it means you're sitting there, probably in a courtroom or a lawyer's office. You've been caught. You know it, and you're trying to figure out how to spin your way out of this. She leaned closer to the camera. Let me save you the trouble. You can't. Her voice remained steady, but I could see her hands trembling slightly. I have 147 videos documenting every time you took money from me, every forged signature, every threat, every lie. My lawyer has copies. My accountant has copies. The evidence is overwhelming. She paused. You could try to claim these videos are fake, doctored, but they span 12 years, Karen. They show you aging. They show the house changing. They show dates and newspapers in the background. Any forensic expert will confirm they're authentic. Grandma's eyes softened, just for a moment. I didn't want it to come to this. I gave you chance after chance to stop, to be better. You never took them. She straightened in her chair. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to drop this lawsuit. You're going to leave Mila alone. And you're going to pray that she's merciful enough not to press criminal charges. Her final words were barely above a whisper. Goodbye, Karen. I hope someday you understand what you've lost. The screen went black. I saved this video separately. This one was for the courtroom. Month 12. Karen escalated. She organized what she called a charity luncheon for elder abuse awareness at the Hartford Country Club. 80 guests, local press. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so twisted. I learned about it from a former colleague who still answered my calls. Mila, she's telling everyone you isolated your grandmother, that you manipulated her into changing the will. People are believing her. I didn't attend, but I heard every word secondhand. Karen took the podium in a black dress, dabbing at dry eyes with a lace handkerchief. My mother was a wonderful woman, she began, but in her final years, she fell victim to someone she trusted, her own granddaughter. Gasps from the audience, sympathetic murmurs. This girl, and I hesitate to even call her family, cut my mother off from everyone who loved her. She whispered poison in her ear. She convinced an elderly woman with dementia to sign over everything. Karen's voice broke perfectly. I'm not fighting for money. I never was. I'm fighting for justice, for my mother's legacy. The audience applauded. Someone shouted, "We're with you, Karen." That night, the messages started. My phone lit up with texts from numbers I didn't recognize. Gold digger. Predator. You should be in prison. Your grandmother is crying in heaven because of you. One message stood out. It came from Aunt Patricia's number. I believed Karen until today, but something doesn't add up. Can we talk? My thumb hovered over the reply button. Then another message arrived, from the same unknown number that had warned me months ago. She's desperate. Her debts are worse than you know. The luncheon was a Hail Mary. Karen was running out of time, and desperate people make mistakes. I just had to wait for hers. I called Harold the next morning. I have everything, I said. 147 videos, 12 years of evidence, financial records, her own words on camera. Harold was silent for a long moment. What do you want to do with it? I want to wait. Until the mediation hearing. That's 4 months away. You could end this now, leak a video, go to the press. I shook my head, even though he couldn't see me. No. I want Karen to see it happen. I want her to be there when everything falls apart. That's surprisingly strategic. Grandma taught me patience. Harold chuckled softly. She chose well. For the next 4 months, I built my case. I hired a forensic accountant to trace every transaction Karen had made from Grandma's accounts. Total confirmed theft, $2.1 million over 12 years. I obtained copies of Grandma's cognitive assessments from Dr. Patterson, clean results every 6 months for the past decade. The woman Karen called senile had aced every mental acuity test. I cataloged every video, cross-referenced dates with bank statements, and prepared a timeline that even a first-year law student could follow. And I waited. Karen continued her public campaign, more charity events, more tearful interviews with local papers. She was betting everything on public sympathy, convinced that the court of opinion would pressure me into settling. She didn't know I was holding a nuclear bomb. The mediation hearing was scheduled for March 15th. 18 months after the lawsuit began, both parties required to attend. A last attempt at resolution before trial. Karen would be there, Richard would be there. Aunt Patricia had agreed to come as a family witness, and I would finally show them all what Grandma had left behind. March 15th arrived cold and gray. The mediation was held in a conference room at the Hartford Superior Courthouse. Neutral ground, fluorescent lights, a long oak table that had seen 1,000 family feuds. I arrived early with Harold. We set up on one side of the table, just us, a laptop, and a thick folder of documents. Karen swept in at exactly 9 a.m. Black designer suit, gold jewelry, the picture of wealthy victimhood. Richard trailed behind her, looking gray and thin. Something had changed in him. He seemed diminished, like a man carrying a weight too heavy to bear. Behind them came Victoria Smith, Karen's attorney. Sharp suit, sharper eyes. She'd built her career on aggressive litigation and had never lost an estate dispute. Aunt Patricia slipped in last, taking a seat near the back wall. She caught my eye and gave a small, uncertain nod. Judge Morrison, the court-appointed mediator, sat at the head of the table, 60 years old, silver-haired, with a reputation for no-nonsense proceedings. This mediation is to determine whether a settlement can be reached in case 2024-CV1847, he began. Both parties have the opportunity to present their positions before we discuss terms. Victoria stood first. Your Honor, my client has endured 18 months of emotional torment. Her mother's dying wishes were corrupted by a granddaughter who exploited a vulnerable, mentally diminished woman. Karen dabbed at her eyes right on cue. We intend to prove that Margaret Marshall lacked testamentary capacity, that Mila Marshall exercised undue influence, and that this will should be declared null and void. Victoria sat down. Judge Morrison looked at me. Miss Marshall, your response? I looked at Harold. He nodded. Your Honor, I said quietly, we have evidence that tells a very different story. Victoria wasn't finished. Before the respondent presents anything, she said smoothly, I'd like my client to address the court directly. Mrs. Cole has important testimony about her mother's final months. Judge Morrison nodded. Proceed. Karen rose slowly, clutching a tissue like it was a prop in a Broadway production. She turned to address the room, not just the judge, but Aunt Patricia, Richard, anyone who would listen. My mother didn't recognize me at the end, she began, voice trembling. She would look right through me, call me by other names, forget who I was. She dabbed her eyes. But with Mila? She was always clear, always lucid. Karen's voice turned bitter. Doesn't that seem strange? That my mother only had clarity when her manipulator was present? Patricia shifted uncomfortably in her seat. I noticed Richard staring at the floor. I tried to visit her, Karen continued. I tried to be there for her. But every time I came to the house, Mila had some excuse. She's resting. She's not feeling well. Maybe tomorrow. She pointed at me, hand shaking. My mother died thinking I abandoned her, because this woman, this girl, planted those thoughts in her mind, isolated her, turned her against her own daughter. Karen sat back down, burying her face in her tissue. Victoria looked satisfied. Your Honor, we have sworn statements from Mrs. Cole's friends confirming Mrs. Marshall's declining mental state. We believe this pattern of isolation constitutes elder abuse. Judge Morrison made a note. Miss Marshall, you may respond. I stood. My grandmother wasn't senile, I said calmly. She wasn't manipulated, and she wasn't isolated. I placed my hand on the laptop. She was documenting everything. Karen's head snapped up. What? Harold connected the laptop to the room's display screen. The large monitor on the wall flickered to life. Your Honor, I said. My grandmother left behind video evidence. 147 recordings spanning 12 years. I'd like to play one now, the final video she made, 1 week before her death. Victoria half rose. Your Honor, we've received no prior disclosure of this. The evidence was discovered in a hidden room in the estate, Harold interjected smoothly. My client only recently gained access. All materials will be fully disclosed to opposing counsel. Judge Morrison considered this. I'll allow it. Play the video. I clicked play. Grandma Margaret appeared on the screen, sitting in William's hidden study, wearing her blue cardigan, eyes clear and focused. Karen went rigid. If you're watching this, Karen, Grandma's recorded voice filled the room, it means you've done exactly what I predicted. Karen whispered, No. You've contested the will. You've called me senile. You've tried to take everything from Mila. The room was utterly silent. Patricia's hand covered her mouth. Richard had gone pale. But I was never senile. I had cognitive tests every 6 months. Dr. Patterson has all the records. I was of sound mind until the very end. Grandma's expression hardened. I recorded everything, Karen. Every time you demanded money, every threat, every forged signature. 147 videos over 12 years. Karen stood abruptly. Turn it off! This is fake! Judge Morrison's voice was sharp. Sit down, Mrs. Cole. Grandma's final words played over Karen's protests. You're going to drop this lawsuit. You're going to leave Mila alone, and you're going to pray she's merciful enough not to press criminal charges. The screen went dark. Karen stood frozen, her perfect composure shattered like dropped crystal. Your Honor, Harold said. With your permission, I'd like to show one additional video from the collection. This one is dated March 15, 2018. Judge Morrison nodded. Proceed. The screen lit up again. Grandma's living room, Karen leaning over her, face twisted with impatience. Sign the check, Mother. Karen, this is $75,000. I know what it is. Sign it. The courtroom watched Karen on screen threaten her own mother, watched her invoke me as a weapon, watched Grandma's hand tremble as she picked up the pen. When it ended, no one moved. Aunt Patricia stood slowly from her seat against the wall. Her face was ashen. Karen, her voice cracked. What did you do? Karen whirled toward her sister. Patricia, don't, it's taken out of context. Out of context? Patricia's voice rose. You were threatening her. You were using Mila to… Richard was in trouble. I had no choice. Richard stood abruptly. Don't bring me into this. Into this? Karen spun on him. This is your fault. Your gambling, your debts. My fault? Richard's voice cracked. I didn't know you were taking this much. $2 million, Karen? $2 million? The room erupted. Karen screaming at Richard, Richard backing toward the door, Victoria trying to restore order, Patricia crying, Judge Morrison banged on the table. Enough! Silence fell. He looked at Karen with barely concealed disgust. Mrs. Cole, I strongly suggest you consult with your attorney about your options. This mediation is in recess for 15 minutes. Karen collapsed into her chair. I stayed silent through all of it, watching, remembering every lie she'd told about me, every job I'd lost, every sleepless night. Grandma had been right. The truth didn't need to shout. It just needed to be heard. Now I know you're dying to find out what Karen did next. But before I tell you, I want to hear from you. Do you think Karen deserves forgiveness? Comment no if you believe she should face the full consequences, or yes if you believe in second chances. I'll read every single response. And make sure you've hit that notification bell, because the ending of this story, it's not what you'd expect. Okay, let's finish this. The 15-minute recess stretched to 45. Through the glass walls of the conference room, I watched Victoria and Karen huddled in the hallway. Victoria's gestures were sharp, emphatic. Karen's shoulders slumped lower with every passing minute. Richard had already left. He didn't even say goodbye. Harold sat beside me, calm as always. She's calculating, he said quietly, trying to figure out if there's any way to spin this. Is there? No, not with that video evidence. If this goes to trial, she'll lose. And if the prosecutor sees those recordings. He let the implication hang. Financial exploitation of an elderly person, criminal charges, possible prison time. Finally, Victoria pushed back into the room. Karen followed, looking like she'd aged 10 years in under an hour. Victoria cleared her throat. Your Honor, after consultation with my client, we've decided to withdraw the lawsuit. The words hung in the air. Judge Morrison nodded slowly. Let the record show that Case 2024-CV-1847 is voluntarily dismissed by the plaintiff. He looked at Karen. Mrs. Cole, I trust you understand the implications of what was presented today. Karen said nothing. She stared at the table like it might swallow her whole. I stood. For 18 months, I had imagined this moment, the triumph, the vindication. But looking at Karen, defeated, humiliated, stripped of every lie she'd told, I didn't feel triumph. I felt tired and strangely empty. Mrs. Cole, I said quietly. She flinched but didn't look up. I'm not going to pursue criminal charges. Her head snapped up. Victoria's eyebrows rose. Not because you deserve mercy, I continued, but because Grandma didn't want me to become someone who destroys people. She wanted me to protect myself, not to seek revenge. Karen's mouth opened, but no words came out. I turned and walked out of the room. The courthouse hallway felt different as I walked through it. The fluorescent lights seemed softer. The weight I'd carried for 18 months lifted from my shoulders, pound by pound. Harold caught up to me at the elevator. That was generous of you, he said, more than she deserved. It wasn't for her, it was for me. He nodded slowly. Your grandmother would be proud. Aunt Patricia appeared from around a corner. Her eyes were red-rimmed, makeup smeared. She approached hesitantly, like she expected me to run. Mila, Aunt Patricia, I'm so sorry. Her voice broke. All these years I believed Karen. I stood by her when I should have. She couldn't finish. Part of me wanted to walk away, to punish her for every cold shoulder, every suspicious glance, every time she chose blood over truth. But I thought of Grandma, of her quiet strength, her patience. You didn't know, I said finally. Karen fooled everyone. That doesn't excuse— No, it doesn't. I met her eyes. But I'm tired of grudges. I watched what bitterness did to Karen. I don't want that for myself. Patricia's face crumpled. Is there any chance we could start over? I know I don't deserve it, but I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe, but it's going to take time. She nodded quickly. Time. Yes, of course. Whatever you need. I stepped into the elevator. Patricia didn't follow. As the doors closed, I caught one last glimpse of Karen in the hallway. Victoria was speaking to her, but Karen wasn't listening. She was staring at me. For just a second, I thought I saw something in her eyes. Regret? Shame? Or just anger at getting caught? The doors shut before I could decide. It didn't matter anymore. The fallout was swift and merciless. Within a week of the mediation, word spread through Hartford's elite circles. No one needed to leak the videos. The people in that courtroom talked, and that was enough. Karen resigned from her positions on the Hartford Women's Foundation and the Children's Hospital Auxiliary Board. Both organizations released carefully worded statements about pursuing new leadership directions. Everyone knew what it really meant. Her country club membership was suspended pending review. Translation: don't come back. The charity luncheon friends who had rallied to her cause suddenly couldn't return her calls. Invitations dried up. The sympathetic local reporter who had covered her elder abuse awareness campaign wrote a very different follow-up piece. And Richard filed for divorce 3 weeks later. The papers cited irreconcilable differences, but the real story leaked through his lawyer. He was distancing himself from any potential criminal liability. He'd been married to Karen for 12 years and claimed he never knew the extent of her financial manipulation. I didn't believe him entirely, but I also didn't care. Harold called me with updates every few days, whether I asked for them or not. Karen's trying to sell some property, he reported one afternoon. Looks like the creditors are circling. What creditors? Richard's gambling debts. Turns out she was covering them with your grandmother's money. Now that the money's gone. I thought about that. Karen had spent years stealing from Grandma to prop up a lifestyle built on lies. Now the whole house of cards was collapsing. Should I feel sorry for her? I asked. Harold was quiet for a moment. That's not really a legal question, Miss Marshall. No, it wasn't. But standing in my grandmother's garden, watching spring flowers push through the soil, I found I didn't feel sorry for her at all. I felt free. A month after the mediation, I returned to the hidden room. There was still so much I hadn't gone through. Filing cabinets full of documents, photo albums, letters. Grandma had kept everything. I was sorting through a drawer when I found another folder. This one was labeled simply, About Karen, the Truth. Inside was a single video file. I hesitated. Part of me felt like I'd seen enough. Part of me knew I hadn't. I clicked play. Grandma appeared on screen, looking older than in the other videos. This was recent, maybe just months before she died. Mila, she began, there's something I never told you about why Karen left. My breath caught. You were 7 years old. Karen had met Richard. He was wealthy then, or at least he seemed to be. He didn't want to raise another man's child. I knew this part, or thought I did. But that wasn't the real reason. Grandma's voice trembled. The real reason was, Karen told me you ruined her life. That if she hadn't gotten pregnant at 25, she could have been someone. Done something. The words hit like physical blows. She wanted to leave you with me, but she wanted compensation. Grandma laughed bitterly. My own daughter asked me to pay her to give up her child. I couldn't breathe. I agreed. I paid her $50,000, and I swore I would never tell you. Tears ran down Grandma's cheeks. But you deserve the truth, Mila. Karen didn't just abandon you. She sold you. The video ended. I sat in the silence of that hidden room, processing what I'd just learned. My mother hadn't just left me behind. She had literally put a price tag on me, and Grandma had paid it, to keep me. 2 weeks later, Aunt Patricia came to visit. I was in the garden, Grandma's garden, pulling weeds from the rose beds. The spring sun was warm on my face, and for the first time in nearly 2 years, I felt something like peace. Patricia's car pulled into the driveway. She got out slowly, holding a small box. Mila, do you have a minute? I stood, brushing dirt from my knees. Of course. We sat on the patio, iced tea sweating in the afternoon heat. Patricia kept touching the box in her lap, like it might escape if she let it go. I need to tell you something, she said finally. Something I should have told you years ago. Okay. She opened the box. Inside was a bundle of envelopes, yellowed with age, maybe 30 or 40 of them. These are checks, Patricia said quietly. From me, to your grandmother, every month for 20 years. I stared at her. I don't understand. When Karen left you with Mama, I knew. I knew Karen would never send money to help raise you, so I did. She pulled out an envelope, showed me the check inside, $200, dated 1998. I never told anyone, not Karen, not your grandmother even knew who it was at first. I sent them anonymously for the first 5 years. But why? Patricia's eyes filled with tears. Because you were 7 years old, and your mother had just walked away from you, and I couldn't do anything to stop Karen, but I could do this. I looked at the box of envelopes, 20 years of quiet support, 20 years of silent love from a woman I thought had chosen Karen over me. Grandma never told me. She found out eventually, but I asked her to keep it secret. I didn't want Karen to know. Sometimes, family surprises you. 3 months after the mediation, Karen's letter arrived. Plain white envelope, no return address. But I recognized the handwriting immediately, the same looping script that had signed my childhood birthday cards, back when she still pretended to be a mother. I opened it standing at the kitchen counter. Mila, I know I don't deserve to write to you, but I have no one else. Richard left. My friends won't speak to me. Patricia hasn't returned my calls in weeks. I'm not writing to make excuses. I know what I did was wrong. I know I hurt you. I know I hurt Mama. But I'm still your mother. Doesn't that count for something? I just want to talk, to explain, to make things right, if that's even possible. Please, Mila. I have nothing left. I only have you. Karen. I read it 3 times. Then I sat down at Grandma's writing desk and composed my reply. Karen. I received your letter. I've thought carefully about what to say. You're right that you don't deserve to write to me. You're also right that you hurt me and Grandma in ways that can never be undone. But here's what you're wrong about. You are not my mother. Not in any way that matters. You gave up that title 22 years ago when you traded me for $50,000. Yes. I know about that now. I don't hate you. Hate requires energy, and I've wasted enough on you already. But I also don't have anything to give you. Please don't contact me again. Mila. I sealed the envelope, walked to the mailbox, and sent it. Then I went back to the garden and kept planting. Some roots need to be cut for others to grow. 6 months later, Eleanor's garden opened its doors. I named it after my grandmother's middle name, the name I'd always loved, the name she'd asked me to use if I ever wanted to honor her. The mansion's eastern wing became a community center. The sprawling grounds became a teaching garden. Every Saturday morning, children from Hartford's underserved neighborhoods came to learn about plants, about patience, about growing something beautiful from nothing but soil and sunlight. Aunt Patricia helped with the ribbon-cutting ceremony. She'd been coming around every weekend now, tentatively at first, then with more confidence. We weren't the same as before, but we were building something new. I stood in the garden that afternoon, watching a group of 8-year-olds argue about who got to water the tomatoes. Their laughter echoed off the old brick walls. My phone buzzed. An email from my former firm. We'd love to discuss bringing you back, senior position, your choice of projects. I smiled and typed back, thank you, but I've found my project. Later that evening, I stood in front of Grandma's portrait in the main hall. The painting had been there for as long as I could remember. Margaret Eleanor Marshall, age 60, captured in oil and canvas. I understand now, I said softly. You didn't leave me a house. You left me a beginning. I thought about everything she'd endured, the stolen money, the threats, the daughter who saw her as nothing but a source of income. And through it all, she'd protected me, prepared for me, loved me. I'm going to make this place matter, I promised her. For the kids who need somewhere to belong, like I did. The portrait didn't answer, but I swear just for a moment, her painted eyes seemed warmer. Spring has come again to the mansion grounds. The garden is in full bloom, roses and tulips and the purple lavender Grandma always loved. Children run through the paths every weekend, their small hands dirty with soil, their faces bright with discovery. I've learned a lot in the past 2 years. About family, about betrayal, about the difference between the people who share your blood and the people who actually show up for you. Here's what I know now. Not everyone who calls themselves family will treat you like family. Some people see love as a transaction, something to exploit, something to trade. They'll take and take until there's nothing left, then blame you when the well runs dry. It doesn't mean you're unworthy of love. It means they were incapable of giving it. Grandma understood that. She couldn't fix Karen. She couldn't make her daughter into a different person. But she could protect me from the fallout. She could leave me evidence and truth and the resources to build something meaningful. She could love me the way I deserve to be loved. And in the end, that's what I'm passing forward. Every kid who walks through these garden gates learns the same lesson. You can grow something beautiful even in broken soil. If you've ever had to set boundaries with someone who should have loved you better, or if you're still figuring out how, I want to hear your story. Drop it in the comments. You're not alone and your experience matters. Thank you for staying with me until the end. Remember, you don't have to defeat anyone to win. Sometimes, winning just means finding yourself again. I'll see you in the next story. Thank you so much for watching all the way through. If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new story. And if you're hungry for more family drama, check out the videos linked in the description. Each one has lessons worth taking with you. Until next time, take care of yourself.